Um, so these stuff, write them all down. If you get these and know what they mean, and you can actually kind of apply them, it's pretty much the whole course. Build tight, ventilate right. By tight, I mean airflow. Although it's also probably good to keep water out. More insulation is better. Better glass where you need it. So, you know, big glass building is probably not going to be terribly efficient. Turn it off if it's not being used. You probably have heard that one before. But figuring out how to actually make that happen in our fairly complex electronic lives is more difficult than it used to be. Don't blow or suck on walls, floors, or ceilings. This should be obvious, but it's not. Tubes should be short, fat, straight, and leak-free. So probably not straight in a gay bar, but efficiency pays, and we'll actually prove that. Compare apples to apples. This is one of the biggest ones, and obviously this goes for way more than this course. You have to compare like for like. You should be always asking, what are the units? Are these things really comparable? Is someone making a claim for a product or a service or the efficiency of something or other in incomparable units with something else? Always know what those are. A building is a system, not the sum of its parts. We're going to go over and over over this because this is a system of understanding really the world. In fact, how many people in the room right now think that they are probably, if they're not already involved with, they're going to be involved in building buildings? That's what you think would be your career. Okay, so this is roughly a little more than half. The rest of you will probably live and work in buildings, right? So if you never have anything to do with the construction, maintenance, or ownership of a building in your entire life, understanding how to use system thinking is a really, really, really good tool. And a building is just about as good a place as any to hone that skill. Doing systems. And then the other one is it matters where you are. So what do you want a building to do? What do you want, whatever your investment is to do? It's going to make a big difference. The different decisions you make, it's going to be a really big difference depending on where that building is and what the climate is that it faces and what's being asked to do. So what do we want from buildings? What are the things that we ask, say, housing to do for us?
Protection.
Can you say that loud?
Protection.
Protection. Protection from?
Weather.
From the weather. Protection from anything else? Other people? Yeah. Okay. So protection from the weather. What aspects of the weather do we want to be protected from?
Rain.
Rain. What are some other? Yeah.
Oceans.
Oceans. That's a very good point. Depends on where we put our houses. Any others? I'm sorry. Someone else? Cold. Yeah, especially up here. Natural disasters, so that was kind of the ocean. Okay, so actually I'm really glad you guys have this stuff in mind. So I'll just pop up, my list was, that was the protecting from the elements, right, so, yeah, I'll just say it. Okay, so we also, it's not just protection that we also want comfort, right? I mean, you can pitch a tent, and you can get enough protection from all of those elements. You huddle in your sleeping bag, and sometimes that's amazingly comfortable. After you've been hiking all day, that is comfort. It is, you know. But in another context, you've been at work all day. Huddling in a tent is not comfortable. It's like the context really matters, doesn't it? And the same thing with community, right? Huddling in a tent with your buddy, best friend, whatever. So I hiked the PCH this summer, so I've got that in my mind. That's all the community you need. But housing that you're going to be in year-round for many, many years perhaps, you want that, where is that house? Where is it going to be? And you actually want to provide some sort of connection to community. And some people don't. There are people who really want to build a shack way out in the middle of nowhere. My brother's one of those people. But somehow he also wants to be close enough to drive into town. So, you know. And then, so we talked about security, right? There's protection from other people. So I forget who pointed that one out. But there's more than that, right? There's the physical security of protection from other people, protection from, say, a tree falling through the house. But there's economic security. A house that costs you so much that you can never pay it off, the house that puts you permanently in a stressful position is actually not providing security. And then there's the psychological security, which can be associated to never paying off your house, but it could also be a sense of comfort, something that actually has to do with aesthetics and feeling at home, which is, you know, I don't know how to measure that. And of course, you know, the three R's are the three most important things in real estate are location, location, location. So that's really true. Is it going to be close to work? Is it going to be close to school? Does it feel like home? And we keep our stuff in houses. And these days, our stuff includes things that use electricity. A lot more than, say, when your grandparents got their first house. And just to make a point, so this is for housing. How's that different from commercial and institutional buildings? Well, they need to do the protection of the elements. You need comfort. In fact, we're going to be measuring that in this class. We're going to try to get a sense of how comfortable you guys are in this room. And I don't have all the gear set up, so it wouldn't be very scientifically interesting right now. And obviously, you want productivity. You know, you want, and that's one of the biggest impacts that people have seen with green buildings, is that the productivity of the workforce and the job retention of people who work in green buildings is actually higher than those in non-green buildings. But then you need security, same list. In location, you need to be close to workers' homes, close to where communities are actually going to be. And in fact, people have moved businesses more and more from these office parks out in the middle of nowhere into downtowns. I think it's Zappos that turned, you know, they really made a downtown office for that reason. And then, of course, they call it inventory and IT, but it's all your stuff, especially electronics, right? So it's not. So we've got like what we want from housing, roughly. What is energy efficient housing? You know, so what are the key elements? What makes it sustainable? And how do we decide if it is or isn't? And I'm going to see. Yeah. So this is really like a brainstorming session. Like what comes to your mind as something that ought to be part of an energy efficient housing? Yeah.
Well,
Insulation. Actually, you said something more interesting. You said well insulated. How would you know?
if there's any leaks, then it might be cracked, or if there might be leaks through that as well, so water comes in.
Okay, so what's interesting is you actually described all the things we need to do to protect the insulation. But we actually, you still didn't, and I'm not expecting you to know the answer, but one of the things we're going to really talk about is how do you figure out what is well insulated? What does that mean? How would you measure it? How would you decide when enough is enough? Any other ideas yet?
I think there should be like some on-site energy generation.
On-site. On-site. And when you say energy generation, you're obviously thinking electricity.
Yes. Or it could also be like heat sources from the ground
Or the sun?
the sun.
Right, okay.
Geothermal or photovoltaic, whatever.
Okay, good. We'll even, PV, from now on if I say PV, it's photovoltaics. And you said geothermal, we're going to talk about that a bunch. I prefer the term ground source heat. In this case, it's usually a heat pump, so ground source. And just to differentiate from geothermal heat, which is much, much deeper and much, much hotter. And really the heat source is different. The geothermal heat source is actually from the nuclear reaction that's happening in the middle of the Earth. A little different. Any other ideas of what is part of, say, greenhousing, green building? Let me pop it with. What are some key elements? What makes it sustainable? How do we decide? Any thoughts on those questions? Yeah.
LED certification on
Okay, so
home or building.
leadership in energy efficiency and design. Okay, that is one of a bunch of different types of certifications, and towards the end of this course we are going to talk about a lot of the different certifications. By the way, there's jobs involved with making these certifications happen, and knowing what you're going to know coming out of this course can kind of connect you to that. Yeah.
What materials used still have?
What about
They're
that?
out there saying sustainably, certain type of.
Okay, sustainable materials. Okay, sustainable materials, I guess the next question, well, how would you know?
Well, I guess some like third party.
So third-party certification. So yes, that's one way to know, is let somebody else make the decision. And mostly we do that, and then we go and find out, well, how did they make what's their standard, and you trust them to do it. Another way is to actually look at, okay, let's do a life cycle cost analysis of all the impacts that this particular material has had, and use that to help us decide whether that's a good material or not. We're not going to do a whole lot of that, but we'll talk about it a little bit. That is like a whole other field. It's not necessarily resulting in an energy efficient building, but it's often part of it. Any other thoughts? Yeah.
Windows.
You want windows?
Anti-windows.
Windows. And what you're saying is that the key thing about them is airtightness?
Yes, and like preventing extra energy usage, unnecessary.
So what would do that?
I guess the type of window and how it is insulated, and how it's put in.
So airtight, which that'll cover well installed. Well installed. For now, we'll just call them energy efficient. We're going to talk about windows, and we'll get to all these measures, which you can actually figure out what is the best window for this location on this house. All right. Any other thoughts? Yeah.
Well, recyclable materials.
Recycle. I'm going to stick that under sustainable materials, but
Well, it's connected to Windows. Architectural design buildings, you can place your building, but placing Windows that way, but some works, for you instead of against it. But say in summertime, you don't place Windows. In
so
summertime.
proper window
So
placement.
The whole room is extremely
Yes, we are going to talk about that a lot. Okay, so what she was getting at is that you can put windows in really stupid places or really smart places, and they can either make your building uncomfortable and full of glare and just unpleasant and expensive to operate, or comfortable and energy efficient, and the location of the windows can have a big part of that.